Happy Friday. We're live. We're back with umbraCoffee, episode 209. And today we are joined by Matt Brailsford. Hey, Matt.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Not too bad. Still here.
Good.
Made it through Christmas.
Oh, yeah. Indeed. You've had a pretty busy time, and we'll talk about that because there's some exciting things we're going to talk about today.
Yep.
Of course, Marcin, you're here too. How are you doing? You're on mute. Yes.
Hey. Yes, I wanted to hear. Whole year, I never heard it before, but yeah, I'm unmuted now. Hopefully, I'm very positive in all the matters, and yeah, just going through the week as crazy. Also acknowledging that my upcoming week won't be as it's supposed to be, but yeah, that's life. That's the new reality we are living in. But yeah, I'm very excited to be here as usual on every Friday. And just go through the list of news.
So should we kick off with some news? Because interestingly, this week was a little light on news, and I didn't really realize that. I mean, we had some bigger items, but maybe less volume. And last week I was exceptionally busy. I wasn't expecting it. Yep. So don't know. Maybe people have had a little bit of a week off. But we can kick off maybe with the product update.
Yes, let's start from there. Rune, as usual, shared an amazing overview of what's happening around the product in Umbraco, and yeah, we've mentioned the new release of Umbraco 9.2 already. There is an unboxing video with a great overview of all the changes and all the included features and fixes. And new patch releases for forms and deploy as well. I like this one. It's currently new releases, patches, and upcoming releases, more patches.
Those upcoming releases were yesterday. So we've got this product updates from Wednesday, but actually all those upcoming releases, now they're done.
They're done.
But this 8.18 is the interesting one, of course. This is, in theory, the last minor version of Umbraco 8.
With the long-time support. And 2 years more of patching, and I think this is interesting information. I don't know how about you guys, but recently, in last months, I shared the long-time support page on umbraco.com so often. So many people ask me for it. So many clients are just curious how it will go, what version we should use, how long it will be supported, and it's clear now, and I like it. I like the fact that this is very clear. It's up to schedule, and now we can expect this 8.18, and the whole support phase is also described here, and I think there shouldn't be more questions about it anymore. What about your feelings about this support? And mention, Matt, probably from your perspective, it's also important to align to long-term support and generally support versions of Umbraco, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a bit of a different task because it's fine for Umbraco to kind of put an end to that version and put everything into V9, but we all know that a lot of clients or a lot of agencies will stick with the stable release for a while. So that's very much why we went the dual targeted approach with vendor product, to make sure that we can keep releasing updates for version 8, because we do think there'll be a lot of people still staying around on that V8 for a little while. How long? I don't know. We'll just have to see what kind of we get from Umbraco in the future, just to see numbers and see if people are still using it.
Yeah, I mean, we're still talking to clients that are on 7.5, and the discussions with them are always, is this a rebuild, or at the very least we need to get you to the very latest 7 with a look to getting you onto 8 ASAP. But that 7 to 9 journey is not something we've taken a leap with directly, and we've been using the long-term support argument for either, well, okay, let's do a rebuild and make a nice clean install on probably V10 when it comes out, in fact, because it's only going to be like 5 months away really until that point as well anyway, but equally the 8 release. However, we're going to have sites on 8 for a very long time to come. And I was just checking, I've got, I think, 4 or 5 pull requests open for 8 that I would really love to make sure we're in that 8.18 release, because they would make a big difference. Maybe some stuff we're overriding in our projects or hijacking to make it work in the way we want it. And I guess with you, Matt, with Vendor, at least, you've got a multi-targeted approach. There's going to come a point where something that works in 9 doesn't in 8 or can't be easily multi-targeted, and that's going to be a problem for you.
Well, it's going to be fun. I knew this was like, the thing is, 8 to 9, there's going to be a problem somewhere. Like as a package developer, you've got a problem somewhere. It's either managing multiple projects and what the release cycles of that are, and cherry picking between repositories, or the approach that I've gone is dual targeted, so that everything's in one code base. Therefore, you can't avoid like the conversion, like you can't forget to do one thing or another. But yes, there will become a time when there are features in V9 that aren't available in V8, and how do you work around that? So whether my code base starts to get a bit, if this, do that, do this, I don't know.
Feature toggles.
We'll have to see. But that might be what drives the decisions later on as to when we kind of put an end to a specific version. Which I hope at that point is basically just rip out everything that's to do with .NET Framework, and then everything else should still be fine and ready to go. So I think that's okay in that regard, but how we manage the deviation while we're supporting both, that's going to be interesting, and probably more so on the front end than back end, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be fun.
And you've mentioned, Matt, a lot of these findings and thoughts in your podcast previously, and I think it was very interesting also for the package creators. So if anyone who faces or will be facing the same issue can just go there and listen to all of the great thoughts you've had there with Kevin and generally about the shipping it for both versions. It was very, very useful for just
Good.
seeing it from your perspective as well, because the challenges are there, but not everyone is just maybe affected that much, because some packages are just shipped to the new version, reported, rebuilded, etc. And it's not that easy with the product of the size of Vendr, for example.
No, and I know when we get onto Konstrukt in a bit, that was one of the reasons why it was held off for so long, because I didn't want the additional headache of managing another dual targeted or another package that runs on two platforms. So I think one's enough for one developer to manage.
Yeah, even on Umbraco 8, I've had packages that I've not released yet because they are pending like a pull request or something that I've made to core, and they're not big packages, they're not major, but they just make what I'm trying to do a little bit more possible. And then those aren't, if those don't go into 8, then it means, well, okay, it's just not a V8 package. And of course I've not pushed it or anything, but I can imagine for a bigger, more complex package, that's going to become a big challenge. And I guess this 8.18 sort of becomes a feature freeze on 8. So even some of these things might be back office stuff. I know that Vendr, of course, there's a lot of back office things there. But if you, if that's going to stop in 8, you can't multi-target the back office easily either, can you? So
no, it usually ends up putting a load of if statements in your JavaScript then to load different things in. But like I said, there's no avoiding it. One place or another, it's got to be dealt with.
Indeed.
Yeah. What I wanted to mention is the security phase. That's something what we can also relate to the next news, because still Umbraco 8 will be in the security phase. It will be patched in terms of any major or minor security vulnerabilities. So that's also good, and it should make people who are running right now V8 projects pretty safe in terms of at least security, not the features around that. And that leads us to the second announcement from the Umbraco HQ perspective this week, which was this medium severity vulnerability identified in Umbraco CMS. To keep story short, there was a finding made by the AppCheck team, and Umbraco was informed about the vulnerability in the password reset process, if I'm correct.
Yeah, so as a quick summary, if you've not configured an Umbraco application URL in your configuration, it uses the current request basically, and that current request could be any domain if you've not set an IAS binding. So if you've done like a wildcard bind any host name to this website in IAS, your site's vulnerable, which is why they've said it's cloud's not vulnerable, Azure web apps aren't vulnerable. It's only if you've done that.
and don't have this umbraco URL.
And you set the application URL, you're still fine. Hence, medium severity. But it's a really interesting one. It was allowing people to effectively spoof password reset URLs, and they could skim credentials off users, trigger an email, send them an email with a different URL in it, and skim their details, which is very interesting. Of course, the app check team we had on umbraCoffee back in the summer, actually, with Seb to talk about this, and it's great to see that this was publicized. Interestingly, I think it's linked from this article too. They've got a very thorough write-up of exactly what the issue was, how they discovered it, and all of that detail. It's a really good read.
Yeah, it's here. And again, something what I didn't know, there's a Umbraco security mailing list, and I wasn't subscribing it to be honest, and I did subscribe today. It's important to be notified. And again, I think we need to send big kudos to Umbraco team for instructions here. It was very clear. Everyone can just check it. Am I affected? Steps to reproduce and see if it's our problem or not, and just deal with it or go further with it. So that was really fine, clear instructions. And of course, we know that this kind of things are happening all the time. And also from this app check team the blog post, there is a link to CVE. Information with the detailed information of the finding and everything what you might need to know if you are curious about the exact issues that can be done with this vulnerability. Go there and check it.
The other thing I'm gonna mention is, having read AppTech's CVE, they've talked about the kind of disclosure process, and if you it's right at the bottom of the article, and I find this really interesting. And I'm not calling anyone out or anything like that. I'm just wanting to highlight that this was reported in July, and Umbraco responded. Umbraco didn't respond until December, or in fact, until December, according to this timeline, admittedly. However, this is interesting for a number of reasons. Firstly, it's perceived to be medium low severity, but actually AppCheck persisted and kept pushing Umbraco to make sure they got a response, and as a result it got a patch, which is pretty good, because they could have just said, well, we've given them a reasonable amount of time to patch this and to investigate things, and instead we will just disclose the information on what we found. But actually, they prompted them, they pushed them, they waited for a patch, and they've still been responsible. So it's kind of going the next mile, I think, to actually make sure this is done responsibly. And of course, AppCheck have a history with Umbraco, with the Umbraco Forms patch too. So I think from when we spoke to them before, they very much believe in that they're not necessarily doing this for financial gain. In the case of Umbraco, they're doing this for the betterment of software products, CMS in specific, in particular. Sorry. They're kind of, they want this to succeed. They want these products to be secure. They're not just trying to get some publicity out of publicizing a vulnerability. They're actually doing the right thing for 6 months, which is fantastic to see.
That's the determination. That's why the big kudos needs to go to them as well for keeping us safer and all of our work safer. So thanks AppCheck and team there. That's from the Umbraco perspective, and we can go to the releases, the new releases. And Matt, of course, you are here with us today to first of all receive a big high five from releasing this product called Konstrukt. And can you tell us and our viewers more about it, what it is?
Well, if you knew Fluidity in version 7, this is effectively the successor to that. So it's built for V9, so the Fluidity stopped at V7. I never ported it to V8. But it was also one of those things that I was torn, like I couldn't commit the time to it being open source anymore. But so like with Konstrukt, we've gone down a commercial route to help kind of maintain and make sure that we can keep it going. It's definitely one of my favorite packages that I created as Fluidity. So I really didn't want it to just kind of fade away. So yeah, just working on it alongside outside Vendr. So whenever I needed a break from Vendr, I'd just have a go on Konstrukt. And it just got closer and closer to being something that could be released. And a few people have asked about it, whether fluidity was coming. So we just made a conscious effort to, just let's wrap this up, get it into a shippable state and get it out there and just see what people think. So as I say, it's a progression from fluidity, so it's actually got quite a few different few features in there already that were not present in fluidity, such as content apps, dashboards, and child collections. So those weren't in fluidity, but are in this. And there's a load more things that I'd love to add to it, which we will over time, but the usual thing of ship it and then and then make adjustments. So I think there's plenty in there. Fluidity was obviously very useful to a lot of people as it was. So even just being feature matched to fluidity, I think would have been enough for a lot of people. But yeah, there's definitely a few more bits in there now, which makes it even better, and there's plenty more to come. So
we discussed last week actually how I think I said that the fluidity, when you did fluidity, you made a big effort to create some fantastic documentation, a really nice looking doc site, and that kind of sparked the solid docs we see with Vendr and everything, and again with Konstrukt out of the gate, launching with fantastic documentation, which looks awesome. We also discussed the licensing, which now we've got full details. I'm even more intrigued by. So I think that £450 plus VAT for it is a no-brainer. It's a niche tool, and it's not like Vendr that you could that's a huge full suite, but it's at least saves the developer a bunch of time. But you've also got a free version, which I didn't realize you were even considering, but it seems like for probably most small cases that actually serves everyone's purpose. One editable entity
collection.
Yeah. So the thing with Konstrukt and fluidity then is the collection is the king of everything. So when I'll show you a bit of a demo in a minute, but collections are like the main thing within it, which holds a collection of entities, and you can edit them and manage them. So with the free version, you get one collection. So if all you need to do is edit one database table, then you can use that free version and you don't need a license. But as soon as if you need more than just a simple collection management, then a license is needed. But I think from using fluidity in the past myself, I think as a dev tool, it's quite a useful one. So once you've got it in there, you start to realize a lot of places where it's useful to have. So I know we've built quite a few projects, and we've ended up needing those collection managements for things like markers on maps, and we've got a demo that's to do with comments. So a lot of user-generated content ends up needing to go somewhere, but then you don't have a way of managing that. So that's where something like Konstrukt comes in, to be able to give you a really quick way of getting that editable by your content editors. So $450 for a license, but once it's in on that project, you can make as many collections and sections and things as you need. So it's going to be there. We're hoping it's going to be like the forms tool. Once it's in there, you start to realize there's a lot of different use cases for it. So
and same upgrade model as Vendr, basically.
So we know a lot of people, we were the same. We know a lot of agencies or websites. Once you built it, you don't necessarily keep on upgrading it over time. So it's the similar model as Vendr, which is, when you buy a license, you've got 12 months of updates. Within that 12 months, you can upgrade as much as possible. After that 12 months, so long as you stay on a version that's within your 12-month window, you can stay on that version for as long as you need. So if you build a website, launch it, and you don't bother updating it, if it doesn't need to be updated, then you can be running that license for as long as you need. You only need to then look at buying an upgrade license if there's a brand new feature outside of that 12-month window that you really want to add on to that project. So hopefully, again, that's flexible enough.
I think so. It's proven clearly to be quite a reliable model for Vendr. And in this case, I think your justification makes total sense. You would maybe maintain the project, a new build, for 12 months or so after you buy the license, and then is there restrictions on? I know with Vendr, the license is free if you're running like an Azure Web Sites domain for staging or stuff? Is there such a thing?
We've not got that on Konstrukt, because we do think there's a possibility that, I think it's slightly different with Vendr. It all ends up going onto the end server, where I think there are scenarios where people might use like a staging environment as a data management area, and then not necessarily do it on live. So then
100%.
there's no need for a license at that point. So
ultimately, it's a tool that helps the developer's workflow whilst they're building.
Yeah,
and then eventually the editor that ends up using it too. But the big value is in that early stage, isn't it? So,
yeah, I mean, it's being sold as per domain licensing, but this is the only reason for that is because it's the only one that we can reliably do. We toyed with an instance licensing model, but it was just too easy to fudge, because really all we really want is that one Umbraco install, whether that's transferred to different hosting environments, would love just to be able to have a license that says that whole install, just license that. But it's just so hard to do because everything changes when it moves between environments, and there's no real thing that you can hook onto. So the only thing there is just email us, and we can easily update licenses to handle multiple domains. And we do this with Vendr. We try to be reasonable with most of that stuff. So if you've got a staging domain, if you've got if you run multiple domains on the same install, so long as you can prove it, show us that that's the case, then we'll happily add it onto the license. So yeah, it's per domain, but really it's per site, per install.
Nice. You've mentioned the demo. I would love to see it, because as a brave and happy user of Fluidity and also UE-O-Matic back in the days, I kind of constantly see use cases for it and shortcuts where it can be used. And yeah, it did an amazing job in the dashboard I used for managing students in my programming school. And it was amazing, the filtering features, and I'm really looking forward to all the new stuff. But you can show us all how it looks, what it does. Maybe someone missed it.
Well, I can run through this quick demo. So we've got a demo project that's on our GitHub, so people can pull this down and play around with the same thing as well. So it's a simple web project, and it's showcasing the three things that are configurable within Konstrukt, which is content apps, which we name context apps, because I'm still bitter that that's not the case that it's named that.
Should be called.
Yeah. So we've got context apps, dashboards, and sections. And for this demo, essentially what I've done is just done a really simple blog website. So you've got some blog posts on, and the entity that we're dealing with is a comment. So comments, quite a common thing that you might put on a website, but you don't want that as Umbraco nodes. It's user generated content, and there's a whole load of stuff that comes with Umbraco nodes that you don't want to be using it for user generated content. So really these things want to go into a database, and then you get to that thing of how do I manage all of that. So we're using these comments on this blog post. So each blog post then can obviously have its own series of comments. So on another blog post, you've got different comments that are on there as well. And I think this is quite a good example that we're giving, because we can show this collection in multiple different ways. So I'll show you it in situ in Umbraco first, and then we can go to the config to show how we've kind of got that. So the three main ways that we're doing it then, the first one of those is going to be a content app. So an example might be, if we've got comments on this blog post, it's kind of could be quite useful that within the blog post itself that you could have a content app, and you can see all of the comments that are relevant to that blog post. So these are only showing the blog posts that are the comments that were given on that particular blog post. So somebody could go into that post, review that comment, make it move it from pending to approved, and then that could be set to appear on the website. So that's your content app. We can do multiple collections per content app, and those will be split across tabs. But yeah, I'll just stick to this simple example. There's a lot more config that's possible than necessarily in this demo. I think this is just like quite a nice, simple use case.
It's another very good use case for content apps, to be honest, because this is also extending the content with the content from the outside, and of course, thanks to the integration with Umbraco, it looks native again.
Yeah. So this is the thing about collections being key. So everything is to do with a collection. So when we add a content app, we add a collection to it, and we show it in this list view. Same in dashboards, and then we'll see in sections as well. But yeah, so the first example then is that content app. On the blog post, we can actually see the comments that are relevant to that particular post. The second one will be dashboards. So again, another potential example for comments might be, well, maybe you just want to see all the pending comments. You don't want to have to go into every blog post to see all the comments that are on there. So maybe you just want a simple dashboard that can just show you the pending comments, so new comments that have come in that you need to approve or reject. So you can have a nice dashboard that just displays those. So again, we can do the same thing, and you can see the slightly different configuration because we don't have a create button, so we can tweak each of these different layouts, and the fact that it's only pulling in pending comments, not all of the comments, so we can start to see that other things are taking place as well. And then the third option is this ability to create your own complete section with collections in a tree, and in here we're showing like this in this comments example, then this would be where you could do full administration and management of all of those comments regardless of where they are in the post and things. So this is more like where you probably go to full on manage all of these things. So we can start to see some new things. So we've got the ability to do these, which we call cards, so we can show like little summaries of the data that's in there. We can do these, which we call data views, so we can filter these collections and be able to see all the different comments that are in those categories or those statuses. And again, you can go into each of these and manage that content. So this is all backed essentially by a single database table. So we've just got this comment table. So here I'm working out of a database. It's possible to use different data sources or data from third parties or on APIs, but I think the use case that most people are going to do is using a database table. So we've just got this simple database table. It's got the Node UDI, which links it to the blog post that it's on. We've got name, email, body, and when it was created and what the status of that comment is. So with that data model, what we do in our project with Konstrukt installed, it's all managed via a Fluent configuration, which I think you've showed briefly kind of last week, but I can go into that. So we've got our web project here. We've got our startup, and I've moved everything out of here just to be cleaner, and I've just put it into an extension method. So this extension method is actually sat in our class library project, which is sat next to it. And this is where I effectively kind of configure everything in this Fluent API. So it's broken up into, I've got 3 definitions in here, one for each of those 3 sections. And so we have an add construct method, which is the pattern for adding things onto the Umbraco builder as part of that startup routine. And in here, we have a config builder, and it's in this configuration that we define everything that we want to be able to do. So we can do things like add context apps. We've tried to simplify positioning things as well. So we use this before and after, so you can start to control the position of where content apps and sections and things appear before and after other things.
Rather than magic indexes that guessing where things goes.
And duplicate sometimes when you didn't handle them well.
So content apps have a weight property on them. Like if you're doing true content apps, they have a weight option on it. And I think it's just, it's magic trying to know which which number is what. So we've tried to be we tried to stick to the APIs of Umbraco, but where we can standardize or simplify, we've tried to do that. So we have to do some funky things to be able to do this ordering. So I think these use an event handler when the editor is loading, we resort them into the right order as it's being sent down. But you don't really need to know or care about that. You just want to be able to say, I actually just want this thing to appear after this one. We do have on the documentation site as well a list of known aliases from within Umbraco. So again, they're not that easy to know, but we've documented all the aliases that you're probably going to need to use. And then you can do just a lot of things using this Fluent API. So I've done it in Visual Code here because it does a lot less. I think a screenshot you shared last week was in Rider, and it does a lot of helpful things of telling you all the aliases, and it just makes it look a hell of a lot worse than it actually is. But in VS Code, you can see how clean and structured and how much more it makes sense. So a lot of all the APIs should just flow and kind of really make sense as to what it's doing. But in the context app example, then we can do things like set the visibility. So we can say we only want it to display on a content node where the content node's alias is blog post page. So that content app will only appear on blog posts. And then the key thing is this add collection, which is then you add a collection and you're passing it a model. So this model is a simple Perco class, and it's decorated with the nPerco attributes that tell it what table to use and what is the primary key. So out of the box with Konstrukt, we use nPerco for our dynamic repository. So you can create a model like this, decorate it with those nPerco attributes, and then Konstrukt just knows how to deal with communicating with the database and persisting that model back and forth.
Does that mean by default you're using the Umbraco database factory? Then
yes, and a lot of our query bits are all using Lambda expressions, and it's Umbraco's expression tree thingy that works out converting expression trees into SQL statements that it's using to do that. So with some really complicated expressions, it can't handle those, but that's because it's limited how much its implementation is. But I think for like a lot of scenarios, you're just going to be completely fine. But it's just knowing that's what it's doing under the hood. But yeah, so that's our model. We've got this comment class, and that essentially mimics what's in the database table. So we saw those properties in the database table, and this is what it does. It maps the model to the database table. So in our config, then when we tell it we want to use that comment collection, we do a few things that it needs to know. What is the ID column? Because it's going to need to know that from the URL and things. How it's linked to the content page that it's referencing. And then it's just some other configs. So aliases, you can set the name property to use in the editor's name field that appears at the top. Date created properties, you can say what is searchable, what fields are searchable. So as we saw, let's just have a quick look back in here. So we've got this search field. You can control which fields get searched when somebody searches in that field. The name field is this thing, so you can control what field gets edited by somebody modifying that field input. Then we've got two things, which is your list view and your editor view. So I'm sure you could probably kind of figure those out, but this is your list view, and you can control what is displayed in that list view, and then you can control what is displayed in this editor as well. So in the list view, for the context apps, all we really did was just show the email field. I think we show the name field by default anyway, and the email field and the status field, but you can control which fields are displayed in there, and there are some other configurations that we can see in a moment on some of the other collections. On the editor, everything is broken down into three things. So we support tabs and field sets. So you always have to define them, but if there's only one tab, we don't show tabs. So in general, you'll have a general tab, you'll probably have a general field set, but we feel that gives you the fullest control over like how you want to structure that editor interface.
That's how Umbraco's doc types are composed.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't realize it. There's always a generic tab.
Yeah. Exactly. So under the hood, we've made it explicit that you have to do that. We could have hidden that. So if you didn't define a tab, then we could have like made a magic general tab somewhere. But I think we just wanted to be explicit, and it's only kind of one extra line. But yeah, it's clear. So you define a tab, you define a field set, and you can define the fields that you want to be editable. So it doesn't know how to edit that model yet. It's up to you to define what exactly is editable at all times. So again, I can show you back in the editors that we saw. For example, in the content app, it doesn't make sense to edit the node that it's linked to, because we already know that. We know that from the content that is being edited, that is the node that it's linked to. But then in the sections tab, it makes sense that you might need to modify that to change, oh, I meant to comment on this blog post, so you could change which one it is. So we can fully control what things are editable at any one time. So we define fields by pointing them to properties on the model. So again, it's this strongly typed thing using expressions. So everything is really developer friendly because it's suggestive. You have to put like Lambda expressions in, which are all strongly typed, and you can use autocomplete and things. And then you just got a load of different little add-on things that you can add, so you can choose which data type to use. So we use data types that are defined in the back office, so you can reference them by name or by ID and say what you want to use as the editor. And you said earlier, Callum, with Fluidity and with Konstrukt, we reuse the data types that you don't use in with UI-matic. They have a predefined list in their package. Then you can only use those, or you have to build custom ones on top of that. But we use the data types, so straight out of the box, anything that's a property editor should work. There are obviously scenarios under which they won't, if it's like trying to do something really clever and uses some request context to figure out where it is. So there are occasions where they don't fully work, but for majority of the case, any data property editor will probably work with this as well. And there's a few other things here. So we have the ability to tweak values between the database and the editor. So sometimes some of the property editors do weird things in how they store their data models. So you can tweak that just before it goes into the database and comes back out. So you can get things into a state that you really want. And so that's like the simple configuration for that content app. So in content, in our blog post, comments, and you can see they're the fields that we defined to be in our list view, and in our editor view you can see that's what we've configured there to use that.
Very cool.
And this value mapper changes the value of the drop down to integer in your case.
Yeah, so that's between like the database and
displayed value.
Yeah, the data value. So I think in Umbraco the drop down editor stores
a string of
yes, or something. So we're just providing the logic for, well, this is what Umbraco or what the built-in data property editor expects as a data model, but this is what I actually want in the database, because if I want to query it later, I want it to be in that particular format. So you can just provide a nice way of being able to say, actually, just tweak the model, and that's how you'd kind of drop that in. So on the others, it's all very similar at that point. So once you know that kind of flow, we do the same thing. So add dashboard. So this is just going to add a dashboard. We can say where that dashboard is displayed. So in here, we're going to show in the content section. And again, the set collection, and then that's the exact same API. We're doing things in here. So if you remember on the dashboard, we only displayed depending comments. So we can apply like a global filter that applies to this collection configuration to only show comments of that particular status. But again, very similar. We've got that disable create button, so we don't want to be able to create comments direct within that dashboard. And then on the section configuration, again, add section after, so we can position it after the media. Every section comes with a tree, and in that tree, then you can add collections. So sections can do a lot more. So you can actually do folders and sub-collections, so collections in folders. So you can actually build up a really big tree. So you've got a lot of different things to manage. So sections are really good for that kind of thing if you've got a lot of things. But yeah, in here, we do a lot more. We add the cards. So again, this is adding those little summary cards that appear at the top. You can essentially, you provide a where clause and it does a count, and it'll go fetch that and display it in a summary. We have got a way of overriding that and passing in a type, so you can do a more complex query to put in that field. The data views, again, they're where clauses that are defined using lambdas. So it's all just strongly typed configuration, but just building up these configs, this just automatically generates all of that for you. So I haven't created any UI files. I haven't created anything in a package manifest. I haven't written any JavaScript or anything. I've just written this configuration, and Konstrukt has generated all of this for me.
I think I said on last week's episode that we spent a long time building out a custom back office for effectively an ads engine, and we've done the whole data layer, and we've built all of that ourselves, and we needed to. But then we've also ended up writing a bunch of back office UI, back office UI components as well,
Yeah.
like to kind of make it reusable and make the code cleaner. It's hundreds and hundreds of lines of code, and this everything you've just showed us there is kind of in our custom stuff, and you've just defined it as configuration.
So I think majority of, like, we've built these sections before. I've obviously built them for like Vendr, and I've done it for client projects as well. And I'm fortunate enough to be like full stack, even like most people don't appreciate that term, but I do back end, front end, CSS, JavaScript, C#. So I can do all of that. It still takes me ages. If I was going to do it all by hand, I could do all of that. But other teams, it usually ends up meaning that you've got front end people, back end people that are all having to work together to build these UIs, and there's a lot of work that goes into that, and it can take you days. Whereas this just takes one person a matter of minutes, and you can have a full-blown management system up. So if you've got a database table, create a config, few minutes. Obviously, you need to go through the docs to understand what's there. But again, we've tried to break down everything in the docs to give you exactly what you need, details on how you set all the different commands that are available to you. So it's all there. But yeah, so it just takes one person to go through that, and they can have that whole management interface in place in a matter of minutes.
And just to clear it out, so if we did this section dashboard and context up with the comments, we still operate on single collection of comments, and this is how it works, right?
It's all working on the same database table. So we've got multiple configurations because we've got different views of that data in the different places. But yeah, you can. It's all just working on the same database table because you're using that same model. The key thing in Konstrukt is that collections have globally unique aliases. As long as you've got a unique alias, then it's considered a unique configuration. The thing I haven't shown there as well, but again, it's in that demo project if anybody wants to see. There's example surface controllers in there to see how you would create an entity as part of like the submit comment form, and then
on the front end.
On the front end view as well, showing you exactly how you can create your own repository to get a hold of it. But if you just want a really quick way, you can use our repository and say, right, give me the repo for this collection, give it the alias, and it'll give you that collection, and then you can loop through all the items. So you can, again, that's in that demo repo. So it's all there to show how to do that.
Nice. We'll definitely link it up in the video description, and thanks Matt for the great demo. And again, it looks a lot better than everything previously. What was already amazing in Fluidity, and there's documentation and apps just amazing. So I can't wait to really report it into the new version. And we heavily encourage everyone to check it out and maybe save a lot of time by just using it for any explorations of the custom dashboards and data tables in Umbraco projects. So big high five again for that one. We have a couple other releases just to mention besides the Konstrukt, not this screen. Uskin team released a new version of their builder with some of the changes and improvements. So if anyone was using the Uskin in the recent version, there's a new one, and you can check it out. And Shannon also, after a short break from doing open source work, right now is coming back to some of the projects and awaiting and looking for some help in Articulate project, which is the blogging engine built for Umbraco, and the new version has some gaps to be filled for the new version. And if anyone is looking for something to contribute, maybe to get more familiar with the packages or with the Umbraco itself, probably there's no better way to dive into this. This is a great package. This is a great tool, and also Shannon has so much knowledge to share and exchange that I'm sure that everyone will definitely benefit from contributing there. And looks like a great list of features to be still delivered for the Articulate.
Link will be down below.
Yep, link will be down below. 2 meetups we've mentioned last week's. One is on January 25th on how to build Umbraco open source projects on .NET Core, and second one is in Edinburgh, virtual meetup 2 days after that on January 27th. All the details, and Matt, you are talking there about Konstrukt, so if someone will still have some gaps to be filled and maybe wants to ask more direct questions and explore some more, this is the closest opportunity to do so.
Yep.
And last but not least,
Marcin, whilst we're back with Matt needs to dash. We tried to squeeze him in to get this demo. It was fantastic to see. Thank you so much, Matt. And
no worries.
I guess catch you at the Edinburgh meetup or something. But thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on. If everybody has any questions, you know where to reach me. But yeah, thanks a lot. We'll see you all later.
Thanks. Thank you much. Yep. So we will just wrap up with a couple more news just from outside of the meetups that are happening. One starting from the blog post on Umbraco blog about the new team, community team called the Diffs. And the whole initiative started a while ago. I can't remember.
I think the intention to do this was announced maybe mid last year, I think, actually. But of course, the idea being a group of friendly guiding faces about diversity and inclusion in the community and can help everyone with improving diversity and inclusion. And they've started. So they've announced who the team are. They've announced they had I think their first meeting as well. Their first.
Yes,
it's quarterly or every other month or something, but it looks like a great team. So let's see what.
And there's a description of what is going to happen, what are the plans, and everyone can reach out. There will be a community hours organized with this team as well soon, and definitely we will also inform about it whenever it will be announced. Jumping on another blogs, Corne described some notifications handling in the recent Umbraco 9 and his blog. As usual on Corne's blogs, it's very detailed and the topic is explained from the bottom to the end. I haven't explored all of the notifications possibilities in the recent Umbraco yet, but now I have a resource.
This resource is going to be fantastic, not only for people to do inside packages, because of course that's what people may want to surface their own custom notifications for, but actually within your own application, within broadcasting events throughout your application, this is exactly what this is designed for. So this is a great blog post by Corne. And again, we've in some of our more complex systems, we've got a whole custom notification system that we've pre V9 had to build because this is the kind of thing we wanted. So it's now in core, which is really cool.
Yeah, and again, some people weren't even familiar that this is in core, and now thanks to this exploration and also the documentation of from the code perspective of how to do it, probably it will be more used more often. So that's a good side effect of this kind of knowledge exchange. There's of course a new hire in Umbraco HQ. Described this time is Asian, who will be remotely working with on the integration DXP team from Romania, and it looks like it's a very experienced.
Was that announced? Because I know last week we were talking about DXP, and something we didn't talk about last week. Whilst we're on the topic of DXP, there was the community office hours, and it was highlighted on Twitter this week that Philip attempted to explain still about what DXP means for Umbraco.
Okay, so we missed it.
Yes, I watched it. I'm still not entirely clear. I think I made my thoughts. I think that everything I said last week still applies. Like I don't know where it's all about integrations, but I don't know where these integrations are. But it does seem that Adrian is kind of going to be spearheading that effort. So he is officially on the DXP team, and this isn't just the DXP stuff we've seen from Andy and Ronald on kind of via forums. This is going to be some official integration. So I'm intrigued.
Plus, we talked about many integrations and Umbraco being open for even listening what tools and platforms we use. And still, Adrian and the rest of the team now will probably be the point of contact where we will be looking for maybe some connections in between of Umbraco and something else. I think all of us can contribute to this. And if we can make the team busy on doing integrations for us, they can be easily reused then and just shipped with our products as well. So yeah, welcome, Adrian, and yeah, it's a great blog post on the new profile, new Umbraco HQ member on the Umbraco HQ blog. There were videos released from the Umbraco Together event. Callum, you can probably tell more about it.
Just from the London venue, unfortunately, because we couldn't record.
Yep.
Carol and Carl and Andy and Nikolai's talks from Glasgow and Bristol, but there's the majority of the talks from the day here, at least the ones that were broadcast virtually. A great talk by Matt, a really great talk by Paul and Matthew Hart as well from Moriyama. I've got to plug the 2 talks that my team did as well, because I'll get in trouble otherwise. But there's some really good talks there. Go have a look.
Yep. And last but not least on our agenda today is another reference to the new videos released by Paul and his reads of the articles from 24 Days in Umbraco, this time article number 5 and 6. So yeah, YouTube channel, 24 Days in Umbraco CMS, and a good way to refresh the content and maybe put it in your headset and just listen to it. And while you are working, for example, if you haven't catch up on the articles yet, more to come for sure. And yeah, big kudos here for Paul and the whole team to continuously delivering a new content to us as well. And that's all from our list today. Great demo, I think. A lot of insights and ideas to where we can use Konstrukt from now on.
We've done some stuff this past week with tables in Umbraco 8, tables and charts, which is something I'd love to see Konstrukt support. So being able to give it a collection of data and it plots it on a graph or a chart would be really.
To be honest,
again, hundreds of lines of code just to make that possible.
Yeah, I need to dig out the project. I used Fluidity previously because it had some advanced filtering mechanisms, custom list views, the whole section with a lot of shortened views of the tables, pre-filtered, and just enabling editors to do really their job and do it easily. And now it seems like it's evolved from this high level to even higher level of flexibility. So yeah, I can't wait to play more with it. And yeah, that's a great set of information from Matt. And yeah, the list is closed. If we missed anything, let us know about it as usual. And also as usual, we'll see each other next Friday. So thanks, Callum. Thanks, Matt, again, and thanks everyone for watching. And yeah, have a great weekend and see you soon.